Chris Hawker wants to say something.
Just, I have to keep reminding myself.
Yeah. You waited for the stream to start.
Down when you don't want to, when you want to say something.
Right.
All right, it is 7:06 p.m. on March 29th, 2021. We'll call this special meeting of the Reading Board of Education to order, being held remotely pursuant to Executive Order 7B. Present are all 7 members of the board, as well from the administration is Dr. Harrison, and 1 member of the public, 1 member of the press. The first item of business is public comment. Anybody wishing to be heard, please raise your hand, use the reaction button, wave, jump around. Hearing none, we move on to discussion and possible action. Voluntary early retirement plan. As you'll recall from the last meeting, I was authorized to enter into a voluntary early retirement plan with the Reading Education Association at a 3-year aggregate cost not to exceed $375,000. As a result of those negotiations, I come back seeking an increase in authority not to exceed $396,000 based on some changes in negotiation that you've been briefed on. So I would look for a motion to authorize the chair to enter into a voluntary early retirement incentive plan with the Reading Education Association at an aggregate cost not to exceed $396,000 over 3 years. Mike, is there a second?
Second.
Heather, any discussion on the motion?
Do we know how much this saves us over time?
We do, and we'll get to that in the next item.
Great.
All right, so hearing none, we'll call the question. Heather?
Yes.
Colleen?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Steph?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Which brings us to item 3B, 2021-2022 operating budget. And pursuant to the agreement that I've now been authorized to finalize with the association, we have received word of a total of 9 retirements, 6 for June of 2021 and 3 for June of 2022. And with the help of Vicky Cram, I've been able to put together a spreadsheet that I'm sharing now that breaks the projected savings into 2 buckets. And let me know if that's big enough or if you need to enlarge the screen. There are, of the group of retirees in the coming year, as they would impact the fiscal 22 budget, there are 4 individuals for whom we have reasonable confidence with respect to their cost of replacement. They are the Group A presumed replacements, and we can book the $129,675 as being a reasonable straight replacement cost, as well as 2 retirements in what I'm calling Group B, which are those for which we have slotted an estimated cost of replacement, but we don't have a candidate or candidates in-house in mind that would slot into those circumstances. And I see that Clarence has joined us from the administration, and if he has anything to add or comment with respect to this, I'd welcome that at this point.
I guess the key thing for me is whatever the early retirement payments we have, it would be beneficial to make them in this fiscal year versus next fiscal year. So if we're going to do this, if we can get that check cut before June 30th, it would be beneficial going forward.
Right. And this savings presumes those payments are made in fiscal 22. It doesn't presume any available funds in this fiscal year. And so if you were to take the full cost of those savings, it would be $188,173. And so the purpose of this item of this meeting is to consider any adjustments to the already approved budget number of $23,249,211, take into account any or all of the savings that are projected here. If anybody has thoughts on how to allocate the projected $188,173. Chris, are you raising your hand this time or not? I think Chris is actually...
No questions. Okay.
No, actually, well, I'm still trying to digest what Clarence said, because if all or part of the 188 were to be paid in this fiscal year,
It would increase your savings
I'm
next year because
yeah,
you have, it would be,
I've got it sort of backwards. I'm sorry. Take that back. In other words, does that have any net impact on the savings for the next fiscal year? I want to understand.
If we were to pay the year one incentive plan in current year, you would be able to take that out of next year's projection, and that would come to $102,000 in total. That presupposes we have $102,000 sitting around in June to make that payment, which is
Correct.
I'm not going to guarantee.
yeah, there's an, I'm
That's-
saying if possible, it would be beneficial. It may not be possible.
Well, okay, then subject to further discussion, my inclination is to keep it simple and just count everything toward the next fiscal year. And if it turns out that that gives us additional money in, I know we don't like to say surplus, but you know, over, then we can deal with that as a separate issue. But I wouldn't want to get into the slicing and dicing of that.
We could look at
I
that.
mean,
in June.
Even though I understand your point, Clarence, but it seems like a place you don't want to go.
Chris, I don't disagree with you. Like I said, there's a big caveat, assuming you had it. And at this point in time, you can't make a decision based on what you may or may not have.
Right.
It's a long 100 days before we know where the health claim fund balance lands at the end of the year, among other things, to see
Right.
how it shakes out. So.
Chris,
Exactly.
take it as me planting a seed that if things go our way, I maybe come back to you in June and say, hey guys, by the way, you might want to do this now. Just as a planted seed of a thought, but nothing as concrete.
And that might, Clarence, put us in a position to make year one payment out of fiscal 21, year two out of fiscal 22, year three out of fiscal 23, and get out of this a year early too.
Correct. That was the whole point. You if you do it, start early, you get out early.
Right.
Well, that'd be a nice problem to have, but we're a little premature.
Chris, why are they broken into two groups again? Did I miss that part?
The top group is the folks for whom the administration has reasonable certainty as to the cost of replacement, because we have a number of folks who are filling leaves of absence this year who would more likely than not in some of those cases slot into those jobs. So we know exactly where they fit.
And the bottom group is just plugged with a step 6, you said?
One is plugged at a step 6 because it's a specialist, and one is plugged at a step 2 because it's a general education teacher.
Okay.
So this actually, it's not just the impact on the next fiscal year. With that many retirements, that's a ongoing impact, right?
But we're going to see that 188 each year, and then once the payments fall off, it escalates by $100,000.
Right, but my point is that you're presumably bringing people in at a lower step and a lower, so that even though you can't really calculate it to a certainty, that this has a long-term positive impact for a lot of reasons.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, the reason we're talking in estimates here is because there's an expectation that we're not bringing somebody in at step 16, and they're certainly not going to get a longevity payment because those are no longer in the contract for new hires and things of that nature. But
Right.
The expectation is a measurable delta in cost.
Yeah.
No, of course, if one of the hires comes in at MA plus 10 because that's the only candidate available in a certain field, we have to make that adjustment on the fly. All the same, if they come in at MA plus 3, it's a breakage to the positive.
Right.
So looks like you didn't do the math there, right? So if we were to take the 188, 173 out of the approved budget, the increase would be lower than 6.
Correct. I haven't done any of that. So I'll just do it here. If we do this, minus that, and then this equals this minus.
Chris, when you get a chance, can you make that a little bit bigger?
Actually, you know what? mean, 11-point font isn't big enough for you?
There you go.
So that would be, if you took the full 188 off, you'd be looking at a budget of 23,061,038 or 487,242.
2.2%.
So I know you guys don't love to, what do I want to say, give up our responsibility and authority to the Board of Finance, but I was surprised by the feedback that we got at the public hearing that we hadn't budgeted enough. And finally, we agree, the Board of Finance and I agree. But if that is the sentiment, can we not, and maybe you want to vote tonight, I don't know, but can we not float this idea and explain that this money is available and it could come out? But if the overwhelming opinion from the Board of Finance is that this is not a year to budget on the low side, that we could leave it in as a, unexpended, what do I want to say? What do we say, call the special, the outplay students, not yet
Not yet finalized.
Yet
outplacement.
finalized.
not yet finalized expenses?
I mean, Colleen, it wasn't one of those budget. I don't feel like it was one of those budget seasons where the administration came to us and asked for a whole bunch of things that we said no to. I think we added a classroom teacher at the elementary level, so we were at the same number of the right class sizes. We added a classroom teacher at the 5th grade level, so we were 5 sections, I think it was, across the board. We added, I think, in one case to what was requested on the music side, right?
Yep.
One thing that I asked about after that meeting was the idea of putting some funds aside for like activities, fun things, like maybe at once a quarter, there's like a pep rally kind of thing. And I think that there will be funding available for that. Is that right? Do we still think that some of the COVID funding that is available is for like community activities and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we look at the sort of for the broad categories that those federal funds could be used for, I mean, there's not a category of fun, but there is a category of, kind of related to social and emotional learning and student connections and all of those pieces. So I think that there is an opportunity there to meet those needs with some of those federal funds.
And what about like homework clubs after school, before school, for kids who need a little extra help? Is that funding there for that also?
So that funding could be used for that. Now, that was something that was in the initial budget that we presented, kind of the first round before we started making any cuts. I know that at, I think at both schools that there was funds initially budgeted for homework club.
And so, but we took that out. I don't remember.
I don't remember either. Clarence, do you remember?
I don't think we did.
I don't think we did, but I'm about to cross over into different districts. I remember cutting some clubs, I think, in Easton.
We restored all of our clubs.
I think we lost Garden Club, I think, and I think that was an administrative recommendation.
Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm talking more about like, so we started at 8.4%. So we cut something. We cut a lot of stuff.
Insurance.
So maybe we consider that money for the insurance. Maybe we consider the custodial position. I don't know. It's just an idea that I had. I've never gotten feedback like that from the Board of Finance before. So
I don't think that I didn't hear that as overwhelming from the Board of Finance.
okay.
I heard that from Jamie.
I heard that from Ed.
I think Chris's good hand is trying to raise a
My
question.
hand is
Okay.
the counting. I would play this absolutely straight because otherwise we go to potentially a credibility issue. I certainly did not hear from a majority of the Board of Finance that they would encourage, spending more. And I think that if we start saying, well, because we already sort of telegraphed that we could be seeing a savings from retirements. And I would say you keep it just right down the middle, exactly what we said. Because if we start coming back and saying, well, we got these savings, so that let us put back this and that. Or you could go the other side, saying, well, we thought about it again, and maybe we should take this. Don't do it. Just play it straight down the middle. And if we have to interact with the Board of Finance one way or the other in a second round, fine. We'll do it when we get there.
Well said.
Agreed. And I think, Mike, as you pointed out, there wasn't a lot that we said no to or that was taken out of the basket that was asked for.
I think the only thing that I would say is that we're playing health insurance and claims razor thin, the way that we've budgeted it, on the expectation that we're going to be using some carryover funds to make that work, which my thought is fast forwarding to end of fiscal 22 in June. We've become accustomed to being in a position to top off that claims balance end of the year to feel comfortable. I don't know sitting here today that I can bank on that being the case next year, which is going to put us in a position this time next year of saying we're going to need to fund the claims fund at a healthier level than we're funding it right now, at a way that might be a double-digit percentage increase, and we just got to be prepared for that. And that plus the uncertainty in part about the replacement costs gives me pause about taking the full 188. But I agree with Chris that there's a lot to be said with playing it straight as here's what the numbers are, here's what it says, with the caveat that everybody understands that at 2.16% we're taking an aggressive health claims position, and we're making certain assumptions to the extent that if an outplacement goes sideways, or if there's a major issue somewhere, we're going to be squeezed pretty fast. But I don't think we should say no to the $188,000 in savings and start finding new places to spend it if we didn't go into the last round of our own negotiations saying, I really wish I had another $50,000 to pay for X. We didn't do that. The board came forward and said, here's where we want to fund health insurance. That's where we funded it. And, we sort of ride on that, I think.
Yep.
We ready for a motion?
Wait, the one other thing, I can't find it. We got an email regarding improvements to the building, things like that. Are there things that we should be, I noticed that the flagpole's still not fixed. Are there things that we should be doing, just looking forward to being responsible for these buildings that we're taking care of?
Heather, we have a timing issue in that we're having some building assessments done, but I don't think they'll be done in time to help you all plan this year for the future. So I mentioned it that we're going to have an assessment, done, but I just don't think we'll have the results in time for you all to make some decisions now.
Although there are some things that we know about that need to be done, that we probably do have time for. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on the timing side, but what we know about is the elevator, the alarm system, the paving in the backyard, paving back behind RES. We know those things are ready, and we have numbers on those, Clarence. Can we not get the CapEx request in? That wouldn't be in this budget. It would be kind of with the budget, but it would.
I mean, that's where I've been hoping the facilities committee would come through with a capital plan since January, basically, so that we could have that conversation moving forward. And the last Board of Finance meeting seemed, the tone I got from them was, if you haven't asked for something now, you don't bother asking for it. But
I don't want to derail this, and this is off topic, but the question of the that boardwalk at the Lone Town Marsh, I was wondering, since that is used as a classroom, if that could be COVID expenses, like outdoor classroom. Does that count as an outdoor classroom?
I think the problem would be it's not school.
Not school
building.
property?
Not
Yeah,
our
it's not
property.
School property.
The town could use Recovery Act money for it, though, I would assume, under the
Right.
same premise.
Yeah.
But while we're a little bit afield, let me ask Clarence and Rydell if there have been any changes to things like the unfinalized outplacements or any other expenses that have moved since we last had our conversation, to the extent that that impacts this conversation.
No, I spoke with Jen Del Conte. We meet regularly, but spoke with her today. I don't see anything different in that anticipated budget, just as far as any updated numbers with regarding outplacements. Clarence, have you heard anything different?
No, not at all. It's been sort of, thankfully, very quiet about new kids coming in, or it's been, knock on wood, we're just keeping our heads down.
Any other thoughts, John, Steph?
No, I'm in agreement with Mr. Hocker.
Nothing here. It was Angela Case that sent the email about the capital improvements. So, yeah, I would agree that if anything there can be considered, that's great, but also agree that savings is savings and touted as such,
All right, anybody want to make a motion with respect to the budget?
Chris, before anyone makes a motion, so I just want to say, given that as the new superintendent, and on behalf of Clarence and I, with this being the first time going through this budget process with the Board of Finance in particular, I appreciate us going with the number that's here. I think that for us, it is really important that as kind of new administrators in town, that we establish a real sense of trust with the community. And I think that this is a way of doing that. And, I think it represents how we want to interact with the town going forward. And so I appreciate that this is sort of the direction that we're taking, where it is just very clear that we're looking at that one-to-one kind of correspondence between here's the savings and then here's how that looks in our budget.
But again, before the motion, if I could just add, this is a real win, folks, for us, long term. It really is, and it shouldn't. Not that you're going to downplay it, but it's just we've been worried about having top-heavy staff in terms of seniority for all this time, and how that affects the budget year to year. And this is a big one. That's great.
We're going to recognize savings in fiscal 22 of these 6 retirements, then in fiscal 23, these 6 plus 3 additional ones. So
yeah, plus all the bending of the curve in the out. So,
Yeah, thank you to the negotiating committee.
Absolutely.
Well done.
Absolutely.
So I thought I saw Mike's hand up, itching to make a motion.
I was just saying that we, but before I do, to add to what Chris said, we did set ourselves up for this, a few years back. We had that moment in time where we had probably the most people at the top step in the entire, that we've ever had. And that's the moment where we changed from 12 steps to 16 steps, which, saves an average, when, the turnover is coming, not that we're, itching to have our, experienced teachers, retire, but when they do retire, which is inevitable, we save an average of $7,000, per teacher per year, just when you compare the old 16 step or the old 12 step to the new 16 step. So in addition to breakage, there's other goodness that happens. And if you think 188 is good, I think Chris, you said this earlier, as soon as we're done paying the incentive, you get the full benefit later.
Right. And what
Down the line.
The way it overlaps is the last time we ran a plan was in 2018. I think that incented 13 retirements, the payments for which are now coming off the books and will be replaced by these, but we're now recognizing the full benefit of those turnovers at this point in next year's budget, which is part of how we're able to be talking at a 2.2 instead of something higher.
Right. And I would not be shy to make all of these points to the Board of Finance.
With that said, maybe a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we revise our budget request for fiscal year 21-22 to a new number of 23,061,038, which is an increase of 487,242 over last year, or over the current year, and an increase of 2.16%.
Second that.
Second. Oh,
I had Mike and John. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the question. Heather,
yes.
Colleen,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Steph,
Yes.
John.
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion carries 7-0. That concludes item 3B on the agenda, which brings us to public comment. Any members of the public wishing to comment, please use the reaction button to raise your hand. Otherwise, make yourself heard. Hearing none, move on to board member comment.
A comment from me. I was nervous about the order in which we did this. And I want to just say I appreciate working with my fellow board members on this to bring it successfully through to completion, kind of the way we talked about it, even though it was a little bit back to what we normally do, and made me nervous, sweaty palms. Thank you for everybody's help on this.
Yeah, and a special thank you to Vicky if she ever hears these. I hope she's not spending her time listening to our meetings, but just so that it's out there, that I really appreciate
Agreed.
all of her support.
Agreed, absolutely.
Yep.
It's very likely she can hear it from Clarence's speakers right
Oh,
now.
Good.
I just need to say it louder.
She's amazing.
I'll let you know. This is not normal, but she's actually not here. Normally it's the two of us, but she's actually not here. Right? I think she tried to enjoy the sunlight while she could.
Yeah. Please give her our regards.
It is not an understatement to call Vicky a magician for the way in which she has maneuvered our human resources, as well as the way she's scheduled these vaccine clinics and allowed us to stay in school full time while doing it, which has not been the case of many other districts. Any other board member comments? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Mike, is there a second?
I'll second.
Heather, any objection? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 7:34 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you, everybody.